Plus, dream home denied.
This is not what we asked for.
An unsuspecting buyer fuming under a flight path. CTV News starts now.
CTV News with Andrea Case and Ken Shaw.
Good evening. We begin with the bump in pay for those working at minimum wage.
We will break down the numbers and the details in this massive overhaul of Ontario's labor laws, as well as the wider impact of the Liberal government's decision. Let's start at Queen's Park with our Paul Bliss. Paul, on the surface, it sounds like good news.
As always, Andrea, it depends on your perspective, certainly. There are 30% of the people in the province of Ontario who are working making less than $15 an hour, and most of them are women. Today, in a very campaign-like announcement, the Premier staked her claim when it comes to job security and wages, and she certainly set the tone for the election campaign.
So I believe it's the responsibility of government to take a stand.
And that stand will see 30% of Ontarians get big raises in the next year and a half.
People are working longer, jobs are less secure, benefits are harder to come by, and protections are fewer and fewer.
Here's the plan. Minimum wage rises to $14 an hour January 1st, up from $11.40. Then in 2019, it rises to $15. Part 2 of the plan guarantees equal pay for equal work among part-time and full-time employees. More vacation time, up from 2 weeks paid vacation after 5 years to 3 weeks. Employers who cancel shifts with less than 48 hours notice must pay workers 3 hours wages as penalty. And workers get the right to 10 days emergency personal leave every year. 2 of those days must be paid.
What you'll see is another 150 inspectors hired across the province of Ontario, which will be a doubling of the complement we have now. We'll be doing blitzes, we'll be out there.
The government spent 2 years studying precarious employment and workers' rights, but the speed at which this minimum wage increase is coming in is causing concern. The Chamber of Commerce, we think that this will have perverse, unintended consequences. It's just not fair.
That's a lot for many of our members to stomach, especially small businesses who don't have the flexibility that larger businesses have. They're going to see a big impact.
But not all businesses worry. Helmi Ansari pays $16.50 an hour.
Paying a living wage has been not only great for our staff, but it's also been good for our business as well. From a turnover perspective, from an employee wellness perspective, from engagement perspective.
The Premier argues Ontario's economy is strong and thriving, and now is the right time to make these changes to benefit workers.
The bigger picture is this. The Premier has set the table for the election. She's cutting hydro rates, free pharmacare, more daycare spaces, and certainly this move when it comes to minimum wage and job security and the balanced budget. This puts the squeeze on the Conservatives to stake a claim and tell everybody where they stand on minimum wage. And it also sort of squeezes the NDP to the outside, cutting them off on the left wing. That's it from Queen's Park. Reporting live, I'm Paul Bliss. Ken, we'll send it back to you.
Thanks, Paul. So when the minimum wage jumps to $15, Ontario is going to be at the top of the hourly wages in the country. As of today, Saskatchewan has the lowest at $10.72. British Columbia, $10.85. PEI is $11.25. Nunavut, $13. Alberta is actually the first province to pass a $15 hourly wage, but it doesn't go into effect until October of 2018. Right now, it's $12.20 there.
To the trickle-down effect of this move now, CTV's Natalie Johnson is live inside a small business near Yonge and Lawrence. Natalie, a bigger paycheck is, of course, welcome news for those currently working for minimum wage, but someone has to pay for this.
Well, Andrea, in the words of the owner of this shop, her costs are going up, but her revenue is not. She pays herself last at the end of every month. So not only will she be making less money, but she'll be working more too.
Well, congratulations on buying the shop.
Thank you. Patty Jardine became a small business owner last year, selling knitting supplies and patterns.
These are called little angel pockets.
But she's now stressed to know that she'll soon have to pay her 2 part-time employees $15 an hour.
I either have to cut down the number of hours I have other people work for me and do the work myself, or I have to cut into what I'm paying myself.
Her employee, Courtney Constable, admits a higher minimum wage will help her own pocketbook, but worries about the shop's survival.
I'm torn because I want to see the store succeed, and I don't want to, participate too much in something that's like threatening the store's success. So it's a good thing selfishly, but at the same time, it's like, I want to see it work out.
I think the word of the day today for small business is blindsided.
The Canadian Federation of Independent Business predicts the minimum wage hike will force many small-scale employers to cut hours and jobs.
Small business owners pay their employees what they can afford to pay their employees. And when you mandate an increase, especially such a large increase, you're putting serious cost pressures on that business.
At the Pâtisserie Sébastien, owner Charles Imperial says he'll have no choice but to hike his pastry prices when he's forced to pay his 4 minimum wage employees more.
The croissant, instead of costing $2.50, will cost $3. That's what it's going to be, you know, and unfortunately, you know. But it's a vicious circle.
He hopes his customers will understand.
Place like Gap, they can afford it.
While Patty Jardine hopes she'll find a way to avoid cutting the hours of her tight-knit team. And the Canadian Federation of Independent Business is also warning that it will become more difficult for entrepreneurs to launch startups since it will become that much more expensive to run a business. Reporting live, I'm Natalie Johnson. Andrea, over to you.
Thank you, Natalie. And later we're going to talk to the Premier herself about the changes to wages, vacation, and part-time work. Kathleen Wynne joins us in 30 minutes.
All right, Premier Wynne joins us now to talk about the new labor regulations and the laws that will come into effect. Premier Wynne, so $15 an hour minimum wage. Intuitively, one would think that if wages went up, that a business would have to also raise its prices, or it would have to cut back on the number of employees. Yes? No?
Well, you know, we're doing this, Ken, because we know that the workplace has become increasingly uncertain. More people are working part-time. More people are having trouble with scheduling and not sure where their jobs are going to come from. And we are in competition with jurisdictions like New York that are already raising their minimum wage.
So you mentioned that we're in competition with New York. We're also in competition to bring industry and businesses to Ontario. How will that work? Because it doesn't sound like this is business friendly at all.
Well, you know, businesses come to Ontario because we have a highly skilled workforce. We have a very competitive tax regime. There are conditions in place here, and we've made investments, Ken, over the last number of years to invest in infrastructure that supports business and to work with communities.
But I also hear from the Ontario Chamber of Commerce that this is going to actually put some businesses at risk.
Well, and you know, as I say, we have worked with the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, and we will continue to. We know that there are supports that businesses need to have. We've already started to work with businesses to look at some of the regulations that they are worried about, to look at business fees. We will continue to do that. But the bottom line, Ken, is that if people are able to have a living wage, if they're able to look after themselves and buy the things that they need, that's good for Ontario businesses who are selling goods and services.
So what you might call trickle up economics, is that
exactly.
it? Okay.
And over the last number of years, there's been a real gap that has grown between people who have been doing well and people who are not, and we need to close that. That's good for business too.
Are you going to end up campaigning on this, or will this be put in place before an election?
Well, the first increase happens January 1st, 2018. So that's you know, that's a good 4 or 5 months before we get into election mode.
All right, Premier Kathleen Wynne talking to us about the new changes coming to Ontario Labour. Thank you, Premier.
Thanks, Ken. Take care.
You too. And you can watch the full extended interview on our website.